Hi kids, this is Mr. Bickford bringing you Chapter 2, first lesson in Chapter 2. Chapter 2, Lesson 1. Before I start though, a special guest just walked into the room. I'd like you to meet somebody. And that somebody is Frank. Can you say hi, Frank? Frank is a super sweet kitty. He's almost more human than cat. He talks. Hi, Frank. Let's see if I can get him to talk to the camera. Frank, can you say hi? Say hi, Frank. Can you say hi? Oh, he's so sweet. All right, let me get rid of Frank so I can talk about Chapter 2, Lesson 1. All right, Chapter 2, Lesson 1 is decimals and fractions. This lesson should be review, but I know that a lot of kids forget some of this stuff. The first thing we're going to look at is writing decimals as fractions or mixed numbers. So I know that I've got a lot of stuff up here already, so you're probably going to have to pause it and catch up with creating this place value chart. You're going to need this as part of your notes, super important. So again, this place value is what we're going to use if you are trying to go from decimals, writing decimals as fractions, or mixed numbers. Your strategy, if you're starting with a decimal and you're trying to change it into a fraction or a mixed number, is going to be using a place value chart. So I'm just going to kind of I'm going to highlight this whole thing, because you're going to use that whenever you have a decimal and you're trying to change it into a fraction. So let me show you how this works. Basically, whenever you have a decimal, you just put it into your place value chart. If there's no decimal, like say I have a whole number 5, 5 would go here, we'd call it 5. If I have a 478, I'd call it 478. If you have something to the right of the decimal gets read as and. For example, 0.6. Well, if I want to say that with meaning, I'd put a 0 right here, and I would read it 0, and I would have a 6 right here, and that's in the tenths. So the way I would say it out loud would be 0 and 6 tenths. What I say is what I write. So 0 and 6 tenths, 6 tenths would look like this. I've just changed this into a fraction, decimal fraction. And again, what you do is you just put your number into the place value chart, you say it out loud, what you say is what you write. Also note that this said and simplify, so this 6 tenths is correct for that, but it is not simplified. To simplify fractions, you are thinking of a common factor of 6 and 10. What number goes into both of those? Well, whenever the numbers are even, you can always divide them by 2. So 6 tenths is going to simplify to 3 fifths. Next example, 0.45. 0.45, and I would say it, 0 and 45. This 45 I would read as 45 hundredths. It goes over to the hundredths place value. So once again, 0 and 45, 0 and 45 hundredths. What I say is what I write. 45 hundredths would look like this. 45 hundredths. What goes into 45 and 100? A common factor. I see that they end in 5, so I can divide both of them by 5. and 45 hundredths would simplify to 9/20. Next example, 0.375. Again, I'm putting that into my place value, so 0.375, and then I say it. 0 and 375 thousandths. What you say with the place value meaning is what you write down as a fraction. 0 and 375 thousandths. So I would write 375 thousandths. There's my fraction. I'm thinking of money, like $3.75 and $10. I know that I can divide quarters into that. So I'm going to divide by 25. And again, you could be calculating this because we're writing it down. This would give me 15. 375 divided by 25 is 15. 1,000 divided by 25 would give me 40. However, I'm not done yet. I can still simplify 15/40. 5 goes into both of those numbers. And I wind up with, how many 5s are in 15? That's 3. How many 5s are in 40? That's 8. So I've just changed all these decimals into their fractions. One more, 2.05, same exact strategy, 2.05, and then I read it. 2 and, now the 5 is over here, so I would say 5, but I would call it 5 hundredths because it goes over to the hundredths place value, 2.05. 2 and 5 hundredths. So this is actually a mixed number. These are just regular fractions, but because this has a whole number 2, I would write it 2 and 5 hundredths. And 5 goes into 5 and 100. So my simplified fraction would be 2 and 1/20. Okay, so decimals over here. Put the decimal into the place value chart. Say it with meaning. What you say is what you write. Okay, 6/10, 45 hundredths, 375 thousandths, and 2 and 5 hundredths. And then you may simplify if you can. Okay, so I'm gonna right over here say it. So put the decimal into the place value, say it, and then write it. If you can put it into the place value chart and say it, the fraction is what you're saying. Write down what you're saying, like 6/10. So half of your practice today is going to be this, starting with a decimal, putting it into the place value chart, and writing it down as a fraction, simplifying it if you can. The other half of your practice today is going to be writing fractions as decimals. So let's get some examples. 3/5, 1/20. Tip camera just a little bit. 1/20 and 18 and 22/40 will be our last example. Okay, so fractions to decimals. Your strategy is going to be the strategy here is always, I'm going to put this in red because this is also the calculator rule, so this is a big one. You divide numerator by denominator. That's always going to be your strategy, and I'm writing that in red because it is also part of the calculator rule. You may use a calculator to do this as long as you're writing it down. Let's get... So 3/5. If I'm following my strategy, it's numerator divided by denominator. That means the top number divided by the bottom number. Doesn't matter which one's bigger, it's always numerator divided by denominator. In fact, that line means divide. So type in your calculator 3 divided by 5. That is going to change it into a decimal. Try it. You should see this on your calculator. Next one, 1/20. Again, strategy is numerator divided by denominator. Type that in your calculator. 1 divided by 20. Your calculator is going to come back with 0.05. This last mixed number has an 18, so I know that part of my decimal number is going to be a whole number 18. I'm going to divide 22 divided by 40 to get the decimal part. So I'm going to write that right here. 22 divided by 40, and my calculator is going to give me 0.55. Okay, but I don't have a 0, I've got a whole number 18. So what I did is I converted 22/40 into 0.55, but I also have an 18. So my final answer for this problem is going to be 18.55. All right, so fraction to decimal, divide numerator by denominator. Always, always your strategy. Top number divided by the bottom number. So here I've got two parts. There's 22/40. 22 divided by 40 turns into this, the 0.55, and I still had a whole number 18, and that just shows up right there. Again, most of this lesson should be review. Half of your practice today will be decimal to fraction. The other half of your practice is going to be fraction to decimal. I hope that helps. Until next time.